Okay, hi guys, welcome back to the Audio Levels channel. Welcome back to another review. Today we have the Tin Hi-Fi P1 Max Giant Panda. It's going to go head to head with the Rap2Go Hook X, the Tin Hi-Fi P1 Original, which is still one of my favorites, and let's see, the 7Hz Timeless. So we'll talk about them in a little bit. Comparisons, because planar magnetic earphones are so hot right now, just like Hansel. This planar technology is punching way above its weight, punching up against TriBirds in the $500 mark. I love my Tin Hi-Fi P1s. These are a staple of my listening diet. But now we have the P1 Max Giant Panda as opposed to the P2 or the P1 Pro, P1 Pro Max. They are kind of messing up their naming things, and they're moving away from the original styling big time on this. The planar magnetic driver inside this one is a 14.2 millimeter, very thin planar magnetic driver, balanced between the magnets, moving very, very fast, so it creates a very different sound than something like your standard dynamic driver, you know, your cone driver, or your balanced armatures. This is fast moving, moves quantity, 14.2 millimeters, moves a fair amount of air. Now let's get into this. The P1 Max box is fairly basic. This is something I would expect to find on it's the box of a $50 earphone. Now here's a Troms, here are T-Tromso. That is about $80 and it's got nicer packaging. But packaging doesn't mean anything to me because it's going to go in the trash. I just like the presentation and like the way that it is laid out. On top you have the little warranty card and this little cushioned piece of cardboard, and on the inside we have tips galore. Tin Hi-Fi have really gone all out on the tips. There's no case with this. You get a crappy little bag that you're not going to use, I reckon. I would have liked to have seen some sort of hard case like some of the competitors are doing. Even TheAudio with the Elixir has a small little carry case with it. Now the cable, somebody messaged me in the comments and they said this cable is amazing. No, it's a nice cable. It's not anything special at all. There's plenty of earphones, even at lower price points, that do a better cable. You can see the memory retention in it. You can see a kink here, a kink here. It's just an okay cable. I don't know what somebody was comparing it to. Maybe if you're coming from a basic sort of Sony or Philips or something. But in this space now, lots of earphone companies are doing very, very good cables, and you can buy very good aftermarket cables on AliExpress for sort of $25, $30. In fact, I'll leave a link to some of the Linsol cables that I prefer that are under $50. Just as alternative options if you're looking for cables. But as this cable goes, it's just nice. It's not anything spectacular. You don't have the interchangeable jacking system. You have a 3.5 millimeter termination there with a little carbon fiber and metal strain relief on it. You have a dual twist that goes into single strand after the splitter. The splitter nicely follows the 3.5 millimeter jack in the design ethos with that little carbon metal thing going on, and they do have a metal cable cinch on the end of it. The ear hooks are guided as well, which I like, and it is a 2-pin connector on this earphone. Let me wrap that up. One thing I will say is that when you do wrap it up, it stays relatively the same, but see that little flex? That just shows me that it's not an A-star cable, for example. Like we have an A-star cable over here. TheAudio's Monarch, just a beautiful piece of work. Put it down, didn't move. Anyway, tips galore. You have different densities of silicone here. The ones that I was using was the red ones, the red mediums, but they also give you 2 options for comply style foam tips. Let me put these back in the top and we'll get the earphones out. So as always, I use them with me ASLA Zen Fits for a lot of the review, but I did quite like these red silicone ones. I just don't think they're as robust or grippy as the ASLA Sendafit tips, which I think are the gold standard. If you get a chance, pick these up. Link in the description below. These are game-changing for me. I love those tips. Use them on almost everything. So Newton Hi-Fi P1, what is it, the P1 Max Giant Panda, or whatever the hell they're calling it, against the original Tin Hi-Fi P1. That is a big size difference, and that's to accommodate the driver. The 14.2mm driver needs more space on the inside, and well, you get it. I like this little design on the outside. I think that looks cool, but for all intents and purposes, this is just another resin shelled earphone that I can pick up a million different types of them. There's my beautiful Canera Scald. So there's nothing special or fancy going on here. Let's have a look at the outside. It's just a resin shell, 2-pin connector, metal over the tip there. The one thing I would have preferred, you can see that the resin tip extends all the way, whereas something like, what's this, the Mangrid T2 has a metal nozzle on the outside of it. So in terms of design, it was fine. I would say medium large ears only. Small ears might struggle with this one. It has a medium shallow depth insertion, meaning it doesn't sit too far in your ear, and with the sender fit tips that I mentioned earlier, it's quite easy to get a good seal. Now let's talk about the sound of the P1 first, and then we will go into the comparisons with the other earphones, which I want to do. The P1 Max is, for all intents and purposes, a P1 just taken a little bit further. I still think the P1 is God tier. If you watch that watch review guy, it's God tier at its price point. And this just does stuff fairly similar. It has a little bit more nuance in the lower bass. It's a little bit more elevated, and it's a little bit less aggressive overall, a little bit more smoother sounding. But in terms of that crazy weird 3D presentation, that's a wow factor of like, I'm listening to something that's holographic, transparent. Like, yeah, it's a fantastic sounding earphone overall. Like, this is the sort of earphone you can put in and you can get lost in your music, noticing details, noticing spacing. The imaging is fantastic, where you hear the differences and the separation between instruments, vocals, different things coming at you from different spaces, and it just sounds that planar flavor that made this technology so popular with the P1 and then the 7Hz. It is definitely more bass extended in the sub-bass region than the original P1. I'm wanting to do the actual sound description before I get into it, but it has slight extension into the sub-bass, but it's not going to hit you like a lot of the dynamic drivers at this price point. It has very good detail retrieval in that mid-bass range. The range just before you go into the mids, that double bass stringed instruments, where I think it's so important. And that for me, I've talked about this a lot of times, why planars are so good is that in the bass region, they display a good amount of quantity of moving air, as well as the nuances of detail retrieval in the mid-bass section. When you talk about earphones that give you all this extra detail, there's one area that's usually overlooked because the emphasis is on sub-bass, or the amount or quantity or impact of the bass. The mid-bass region is so important to me because I listen to a lot of jazz music, I listen to a lot of nuanced music that has instruments, classical and stuff, that is being produced in that band. And for me, like an earphone, the planars seem to get that right in terms of the detail there, which if you have good detail in the bass overall, good detail in the mid-range and good detail in the highs, how are you going to differentiate yourself? Well, that mid-bass is often overlooked by other earphones, especially dynamic drivers, that refined detail in that area. And that's where it comes out with me for the planars, that give you that, whoa, this does feel like there's more detail here. And I think it comes from that sub-bass range. There's a lot of earphones that do great detail in the mids, great detail in the highs, but that one little section is often overlooked, and it doesn't get overlooked on the Planars. Going into the mid-range is smooth. It's definitely smoother than the P1. Sorry again for making a comparison. It is smooth but aggressive. It's a sort of contradiction in terms, but if you've heard the original P1, the P1 just throws all this mid-range detail into your face. This one throws that mid-range detail into your face, but in a more orthodox manner. It's more easy to get along with for a lot of people. It's smoother, it's a little bit richer, and I think that comes from the added tones of warmth on this earphone. It's not a warm earphone, but it doesn't sound cold at all, and it doesn't sound boring. Into the upper mid-range, again, like upper mid-range starts to go into female vocals, and it hits the sweet spot of that, of pushing it enough into your face but separating the entire mid-range instrumentation so they're not sounding cluttered with guitars tripping over violins or drums and stuff. Nothing feels cluttered in that mid-range, and that separation plus extension into the upper mid-range creates a great appearance with female vocals. Like Adele sounded magnificent, especially with that 3D holographic soundstage. Adele sounded absolutely fantastic in this, but also is it Roberto? I'm going to butcher his name. Roberto Cacipliagli, the pianist. I'll leave the name in the description below. Cannot pronounce Italian. Or somebody like Ludovici Einaudi. Sounds fantastic with the upper keys of the piano stretching in. Treble extension is a lot smoother than I was expecting. It still has that push and extension, but it doesn't flow as aggressively as some of these planar earphones have been said to be like treble happy. This is probably one of the smoother versions of planar magnetic treble implementation. It's not as in your face, so I think that's going to address those issues that a lot of people had with the Tin Hi-Fi P1. Now, me as a Tin Hi-Fi P1 lover, I love that treble. That treble is addictive on this earphone to me. It just sounds so crisp and so precise. It's still crisp and precise here, but it's just taken off the edge into the extension, whereas this maybe sits on the edge of sibilance for a lot of people, and depending on your ear shape, your age and things like that, you're going to hear treble differently, or you're going to be treble sensitive. This one, I think you will have the least problems out of all of them. Soundstage, fairly decent. I would say like slightly above average, not the biggest of the soundstage in all of them. But the soundstage is counteracted by that 3D holographic presentation from the planar technology, which makes it very surreal and sounds like you're in a very weird environment where you can travel to this different instrumentation. Like, oh, there's a guitar happening over here. Oh, okay, there's a piano over here. You can separate it, which creates that illusion that you have this large sound space. But in terms of like width and depth, it's only slightly above average, but still very, very good and pleasant to listen to. Now, let's finish off and try and keep this video under 20 minutes. Let's talk about some comparisons. It's amazing to me that all these Planars sound so different with using essentially the same technology. The only one that I have on the desk here, the Rap2Go Hook X, which you can find the link on the channel. This is an incredibly impressive earphone, but it is a hybrid earphone. It uses a piezoelectric drivers in combination with the planar magnetic drivers to create its sound. It has a bone conduction, and it has that sort of presentation. It has this. These three, the Tin Hi-Fi P1, the 7Hz Timeless, and the new giant Pandas, they all sound very cohesive. It all sounds like the sound is coming out one driver. This sounds like this sounds like the Rap2Go Hook X sounds like a planar driver with something else extra flavor on it. And if anybody's listened to a set of shocks or aftershocks earphones or headphones, I use them for running. Then you're going to know what that sound is, that sort of bone conduction sound is. Now, I like that. The Hook2Go X are also open back, but they don't act like an open back. They don't leak sound. They don't let in a lot of sound. So those concerned about the Rap2Go Hook X being open back, I really wouldn't be worried about it. Also, the bass is far better on the Rap2Go Hook X, and the Soundstage perhaps a little bit better as well. The 7Hz Timeless is the smoothest out of all four of them. It has a more elevated bass and a sort of smoother mid-range, like with more warm overtones. The OG Daddy, the Tin Hi-Fi P1, is still the one that I'm going to go for. People jump on hype trains. You can see I have access to a lot of earphones. I'm probably going to get the P1 Pros. No, this is the P1 Pro. There was the original P1, and then they had the P1 something. This is the one that was the extension of that in the same body, and that for me is the sweet spot. But it's the sweet spot because it's not my only earphone. I use this in combination with bass heavy earphones. So the ones that I actually have in my own personal rotation are the Audio Monarch Mark II, the Kinera Skulled, and where are they? Another Kinera are tops. Where are the bass monsters? Maybe I've taken them out. Oh, there they are. I can't remember the name of them. The Kinera bass ones. Those are $500, $700, $1,000. But the Tin Hi-Fi P1 or P1 Pro, whatever they're called, is still in my rotation. Like, it's still an earphone that I pick up and I listen to. I'm like, what am I going to listen to today? I'm going to listen to some of this. Maybe Tchaikovsky or something. I'm going to pick up the P1s. It's amazing to me that I have these three earphones. You know, this is my all-around, the Monarch Mark II. These are probably my favourite earphones right now, the Kinera Skulled, and they're half the price of the Monarch. And if I want big bass, I go for these Kineras. No, sorry, the Mangrid. No, is that the Kinera? Yeah, Mangrid Zens Up. But the P1s, the original P1s, still get play. If you're wanting something a little bit like less aggressive, a little bit more well-rounded, go for the giant Panda. If you're wanting something a little bit more intense with that sound from the piezoelectrics, by all means grab the Hook2Go X. But I'm seeing some reports of people talking about build quality, although I've been in contact and I've been assured that the build quality is being addressed. And then you have the 7Hz Timeless, which a lot of people really enjoy. I really enjoy this myself as well. But with it being a little bit more bassy, I already have other earphones that this clashes with. So for me, the ones that I'll still go for is the P1 or is it the P1 Pro. I'll leave a link to it in the description below just to make sure I'm talking about the correct one. For me, that still embodies everything about the Planars that I liked. This is such a jaw-droppingly beautiful sounding earphone. I love it. I love it. I love planar magnetic earphones. I think it's the gold standard for people who are wanting to explore really high-end stuff on a budget. It's honest to God, the planar stuff I put against the $500 Tribirds. It's just, for me, it's the way it presents the music is totally different, and an excellent experience to listen to. So don't feel like you're missing out too much if you are going with a planar technology. One other thing I'm just remembering and why I'm stuttering is that the new P1 Giant Panda are far easier to drive. They still scale up well given a nicer source producing a nicer sound and stuff. This all planars scale incredibly well as you go up the quality of your source. But in terms of pure drivability, the original P1 and the 7Hz both need a little bit of bump in terms of power. The P1 I found was much easier to drive from a more normal source, although still sounding better than some of the regular hybrids or dynamic drivers at the price point. Anyway, I'm going to keep it under 20 minutes, guys. Thank you very much for watching. I know a lot of people have been wanting my thoughts on this. Any questions at all, any more comparisons, ask it down below. I know people are going to ask about the S12. Forget that one. For me, the treble was a mess on it. Okay, like, subscribe to the channel. Lots more videos coming, and I'll see you on the next video. I'm out.